In the article titled Healing the Political Divide by Kirk Waldorf, Dr. Kirk Schneider is quoted as saying, "One reason we tend to become fixated and polarized is because of individual and collective trauma that associates with a profound sense of insignificance." He goes on to say, "In this state, people may feel that they don't matter and fear ultimately being wiped away or extinguished." I think it's important to understand the roots of polarization because that quote hit me differently. In my work in learning about trauma-informed care and leadership development and on my own healing journey, I've come to understand that knowing what the roots of my own trauma are helps me to respond cognitively instead of emotionally. Being able to label things and file them and understand them allows me to see patterns and disrupt them when needed. I think that if someone is engaged in advocacy and seeking social change in this particular political climate, where they will meet effective polarization, people who don't like them simply because they are in the out group, which I thought was really interesting when they used that term. And understanding the root of that will help us to not take it personally. Understanding that it could be part of a collective trauma that we are all experiencing right now allows me to maybe have some grace for that person. Another thing that was said in the political polarization is not unique to the U.S., but its causes are, by Alex Russell. He talked about how there's in politics, right, these kind of dual forces, and that there is when the policy discussion is around resources and who gets what, that it's compromise can happen. But in recent times, when the conversation and the conflict is around who we are as a country, there's just no compromise in that. And if we can give other people the benefit of the doubt and say that they love their country and they want what's best for it, we can try to enter the conversation maybe with a different approach. I just thought that was like, we really are, the levels of animosity. It does make sense if you think that, if you can view it as a collective trauma around what our identity is, which is really remarkable considering how we're trying to oppress so many identities. So the other question, so how might this awareness influence the way activists can and should approach outreach, messaging, or dialogue in divided communities? I read the Promises and Pitfalls of Cross-Partisan Conversations for Reducing Effective Polarization by Eric Santoro and David Brockman. And I read the article several times, and I think they say that these effects would be conditional on topic, diminishing if the conversation encouraged participants to discuss areas of disagreement. And there was also the article about Pray for Angels. I'm sorry, I don't have it quoted, but around having dialogue and finding common ground. And if we can enter, if we look at framing, if we can consider how to frame things in a way that is inclusive to identities, um, that people aren't hard. I mean, it's layered, and these conversations have to happen one at a time, probably. Um, but I do think that when you're thinking about how your message is going to be heard by different people, and that they may have this strong sense of animosity towards the outer group, um, you it can be intentional and look for ways to find common ground to include more people. I thought it was interesting, especially in the article by Eric Santoro and David Brockman. They used the term the in group and out group, and I remember learning a little bit about this in a class a couple of semesters ago. Just how we we tend to outgroup people for safety, and if you think about there's I think a communication theory that says that anything over 8 people, the group will break into smaller groups because we just can only connect so much. Um, and so I feel like there's this maybe we're othering all over the place. Our country continues this constantly. People are othering people, and I think it's about safety. Um, and and so like if I'm a person that I often feel othered for one reason or another, then I can have compassion for someone who is brave enough to take the risk to be othered, um, and especially someone who is willing to talk about hard things. Um, and I think that effective polarization is like a toxic level of othering people based on politics, which I feel is new in our culture, like to this degree at least. Um, and ultimately, again, I think the roots of polarization, if we think about it as a collective trauma, I don't know, that just hit home. I feel like it made a lot of sense for me in that way. And then uh, we really need to make sure that our messages bridge those divides. And it would be unique to each community.